How do you calculate this stuff?
Well, look, we look at data from the Central Energy Fund. They look at the international oil prices. They look at the Rand-US dollar exchange rate. They basically give us an indication of what the over and under recovery is, and based on that, we can make the forecast that we do every month.
So how do you reach this figure then?
Well, I mean, it's the data. It's average data.
And
the data and the numbers correlate, and obviously we see that this is going to give us the under or the over recovery, which means that we will see a decrease going into December.
So this is very good news, as I've just mentioned, for
absolutely
going into the holiday.
No, absolutely good news. I think the only caveat to that is that there may be increases to the retail and wholesale margins that come on the 5th of December, but in our opinion, those will be marginal. So we are looking at quite a sizable decrease going into December. They will definitely be around about the R1.50 mark in our opinion. And obviously, if the trends as they are today continue in the next 2 weeks going into December, then certainly this is a very positive picture.
How do those retail margins work?
Well, look, I mean, every petrol station has to put in petrol into your vehicle, and they get a margin of every litre of petrol. At the moment, it's R1.92, and that retail margin could increase to R1.96.
And that's a regulated amount.
And that's a regulated amount, yes.
So let's assume all of this happens, and
yes.
I think that everyone who's watching us this afternoon is saying, yeah, let's make sure that it does.
Yes.
What does this mean, for instance, for the average motorist on their way to Durban or to Cape Town?
Well, I think it's definitely going to put money back into their pockets. I think a lot of them will feel that, instead of spending 1,500 Rand on petrol down to Durban or to Cape Town, it may now cost them 1,200 Rand, and they'll have a little bit of money extra at the end of the day. We would caution against them actually using that money. We would tell them to actually save that money if they've already budgeted for it, in case the price of fuel goes up again in 2019. So it really is good news, but there is a cautionary note to the end of that, and that is if you can, save ahead of 2019.
Do you do long-term forecasts then, sort of going into 2019?
Well, it's very difficult to do that because obviously the two big factors that determine the petrol price are the international petroleum prices as well as the Rand-US dollar exchange rate. I mean, at the beginning of the month, the Rand was at 14.55 to the US dollar. Today, it's currently at 14.23. So to determine that on a daily basis is difficult enough. To give a very long-term forecast would be near impossible. So obviously, you're looking at these two factors, and that's why we have to look on a daily basis what the numbers are and how they're averaged out over a period of time.
I mean, we've got to have sympathy for the South African motorist, you and me included,
sure.
because we've just had a year where it's been an absolute roller coaster. What has been 7 increases?
It's been 7 increases. So it's not only South African motorists, I think it's consumers across the board. When the diesel price increases, input costs in businesses increases in agricultural costs, and all of those increases need to be absorbed somehow by those manufacturers, and they're absorbed by passing those increases onto the wholesalers and the retailers, and then onto you and me. So it has been a very tough year for consumers, for motorists. We've been battered and bruised. We've seen the petrol price jump almost R1, R2 since the beginning of the year. It's not good news, and this certainly is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
And I think a lot of people now, even though this might be good news come December, are still having second thoughts about driving away on holiday. I think I've seen figures to that effect.
Yes.
And that, again, has a spillover effect.
It certainly has a spillover effect. I think a lot of people who would be going on holiday in December would have made those plans earlier in the year. So July, August, they would have already been planning that, maybe even before that. With this petrol price decrease coming in December, it may be too late for a lot of people to make those final arrangements. Some of them may do that. But having said all of that, I think a lot of people are going to be very happy that their petrol spend in December is certainly going to be lower than it was
And
now.
again, I'm sure you'll come back and talk to us the closer we get to that December break, but it's also incumbent upon motorists to look at better fuel-saving tips.
100%.
Point one here is before you go on holiday, and start doing it now, is to make sure, things like tyres and
absolutely.
that sort of thing.
If you haven't had your car in for a service and you're going away on a long holiday, book it in today. Because
you're an idiot if you haven't.
Because if you wait any longer, there's a very strong possibility you're not going to get a space and you're not going to get your car serviced. But do the small things. Check your brakes, check your tyres, make sure your windscreen's in a good condition. But more importantly than any of that, Jeremy, make sure that if you are going on a long drive this holiday season, get your head in the right space. Drive with a good attitude.